this year's International Youth Day has been captured. Different contexts, common expression. How sustainable is this topic, and how will the expectation placed on youth or young people all over the world be fulfilled? I am your brother and friend MC Likiliki, and this is Isthmus TV. Now, welcome back from the short break. What this topic portends is that young people are going to, fulfill all those promises that the United Nations have earlier mapped out that, are going to be implemented in different nations of the world. Now, remember that when we were young, I've not observed that in this program before, that they used to say, there will be no gas flaring by the year 2020. There will be no illiterate in the world by 2020, no malaria, no HIV, such lofty goals set out by the United Nations. Now, the responsibility have been handed over to young people all over the world to ensure that these social development goals and millennium development goals, are realized, at least in our generation, not in the generation to come. All right. So, how prepared are the youths of contemporary times to ensure that this battle that their fathers and their forebears could not win, they didn't, or does not vanquish them as well? All right, now we are going to be asking pertinent questions, okay? And then we are going to be attempting to answer them. Now you can be a part of this conversation or discussion by, dropping your comment just right there at the comment box, okay? So the first question we want to be asking today is this: what are the challenges militating against this common expression held globally by young people all over the world? Remember, making the world a better place is, the pivotal goal, all right? Making the world a better place, a place that's free, all right? Devoid of violence, rancor, where the environment is friendly and conducive for everyone to thrive, all right? That's the goal. Now, in the past, especially those who live in areas where minerals are exploited and where industrial activities take place, it's been said that those activities are injurious to the health of people who live in those areas, and that the industries or companies who manufacture those things or that carry out those activities in those areas, they don't help matters by ensuring that they stick with the guidelines, or carry it out in a way that will not jeopardize the health and survival of those people in those areas. So, what are the youths going to do to ensure that these companies and industries begin to work in tandem with the guidelines mapped out by the United Nations? That's how would the youths be able to compel or to drive this, needed change in the society. Okay, so the youths are people who are not in position of authority. They're, you know, by and large, if they are economically empowered, you have young people in business and young people who are working. Those are the ones who can influence, the general populace in a way, but it's not in a significant manner, because for you to influence the generality of people, you have to be in a position of leadership. So, what are the youths going to do to ensure that industries and companies in industrial areas conform, you know, to the guidelines that will, you know, enable the survival of the people who live in those areas? Okay, the only thing that they can do is to carry out, demonstrations, both online and physically, but how effective is physical demonstration. All right. Yes. Protests. How effective can protest be in solving societal issues? Because at the end of the day, the thing boils down to those who are in leadership positions, because they're the ones that are going to make the final decision. Okay, so if the youths in the Niger Delta, for instance, right, go about carrying placards, protesting, telling Shell and all those oil companies in those areas that they are not doing well. They talked about Ogoli cleanup some time ago. I don't know how effective, that the implementation process has been. So if the youths begin again to resurface, to go about again with their normal way of protest, insisting that their environment must be made habitable, would they achieve anything with that? That's the question. I don't think that is possible. So that's the first question. The same thing is applicable in up north where there are these solid minerals are being exploited, in commercial quantities, like we have in Zamfara and all those places. So, you find out that these activities are carried out, without, due diligence and ensuring that these commercial activities do not, lead to the extinction of the people in those areas. Okay, so when we talk about gas flaring, the owners of the companies that to engage in mineral exploitation or oil exploration are powerful men in our society, people who are considered to be sacred cows that cannot be when are they going to implement that, law of zero tolerance to, gas flaring in Nigeria? That's the question we're asking. It's been a kind of rhetoric, a recurrent rhetoric in our climate, but it has not been totally implemented. When will these oil companies learn to place the right values on the life of Nigerians? All right. And then the second thing that United Nations noted is that they expect young people of this generation to begin to build up, you know, tech and environmental startups, starting businesses in a way that will be friendly to the environment. That is doing refining, taking over the refining industry in a way that will be, beneficial and friendly to the environment. But how possible can that be? All right. Because if you look at the richest men in the world, men who are in charge of businesses, right? Because we know we run, capitalism, right? Most of the countries of the world run capitalism, all right? Not communism, all right? So those people that are big shots in different countries of the world are not young people. So how will young people begin to, establish companies that would, be environmental friendly or environment friendly? That's the question. If they don't have the hair wherewithal, you know, the companies that young people run these days are largely online. How to build apps, using apps to make money to solve problems. All right, those are the ones that young people of my generation do. All right, but if you talk about the industrial process proper, manufacturing of household equipments, industrial equipments, of course, we find out that it's still in the ambit of those people who have become advanced in age. And there's no way the youth will be able to influence their decisions because they are not the ones in control. Have you seen it? So, and the last thing, or the third thing rather, that the United Nations observed is that the way the youths would drive the needed change is for them to come out during an election and insist that the best man for the office wins the political race. But you see, there are a lot of factors. How many young people of my generation will be able to die, in order to ensure that the electoral process is sanitized? There are a lot of factors, especially in developing countries where there is incidences or cases of vote buying, election violence, program today. What we are asking is the United Nations, do you think that handing over this responsibility to young people without commensurately giving them positions of authority that will enable them actualize this dream would make it visible? This is where we're going to be stopping. We'll come back after this short break. My name is still MC Kiliki. This is Isthmus TV.